Good afternoon, and welcome to the latest edition of Shooting Straight with me at Voice of the Forge. As always, you can find me on Twitter, and you can find the Forgotten Forge Games web store at forgottenforgegames.co.uk, and I am also Voice of the Forge on YouTube. Now, today is a slightly different day in that I have been reviewing the videos that I've made in the past, and if it isn't the anniversary of when I got into making the videos, it is pretty damn close. So this is a year in videos for me, and I don't want to take too much longer than I normally do, but we may overrun a little bit, and because this is almost a recapping of my position, I'm not going to bother with lots of fancy pictures. Today is just going to be the Forgotten Forge Games logo, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the whole reason why I got involved in this mess is because of games. And the reason why games got me into this mess is because of the Forgotten Forge Games project. That is, helping people who have social anxiety or other difficulties in meeting and spending time with people, being able to bring people together in order to play games. Alongside that, in order to make it more self-sufficient, the web store was introduced so that not only could people get the games a little cheaper than retail, so that there was less of a cost for people over time to get into these things, make it a little bit easier for them to not pay full retail. It would also go towards the rent of buildings and new equipment. So say, for instance, there was a desperate need for a new board game, we could effectively source it for the club, with the club paying cost. Or somebody else could buy it, and it then is their copy, but they've not had to pay the full amount. There's still a bit of profit on top, and that profit then goes into the club for whatever's needed. And we were able to build up quite a nice selection of board games, video games, playboards, the 6x4 boards, all that kind of thing in our previous incarnation when we were working with a military charity. Unfortunately, that military charity had to move because there was a better bid put in on the building that they were using, and we've had to move out. They still haven't sourced themselves a permanent home. They're still in temporary office accommodation themselves, and so are we. We now found ourselves back to where we were a couple of years ago in the back of a church hall. But considering what's gone on, we're still going, we're still moving forward. Where, as they say, where there's a will, there's a way. But we've now come to a year in Gamergate, and we've come to roughly a year of me being involved. Now, why did I get involved? Well, it was in the wake of the Gamers Are Dead articles. I had missed the whole thing with the Zoe post, and it wasn't until I went back to that later and I got all of the information that it was one of those things where people have been called out for being bad actors, and of course, because I wasn't involved in the initial the Five Guys coverage, this, that and the other, I missed a lot of the misinformation. So I got it that it was Nathan Grayson who was the person who gave a positive coverage in another article. It wasn't the fact that he gave her a positive review. That stemmed from things like the Zoe post, and the fact that I was aware of the fact that she was gaslighting and other bits and pieces in what she was trying to say against the Zoe post and the relevant gagging order that was made. So I came into it after a lot of that initial outcry had begun, and we already had information which was solid and saying, look, these guys are working hand in glove with these other guys, and because they are having either a sexual relation or a friendship relation, or there's some kind of nepotism going on here, or person A who is reviewing a game is also person A who's funding the game, and is also person A who's on the board of judges for a gaming award, we were able to show that there was collusion, and there was this vast gatekeeping of ideology within the gaming genres, which is why I got involved. I got involved because I don't want people with an agenda turning around and saying, well, this game over here gets 10 out of 10 because it ticks all the right ideological boxes, but this game over here, which is lots of fun, but it's problematic because boobs, it's problematic because women, it's problematic because white people, therefore we'll give it a 1 out of 10, regardless of the actual playability of the game, the content of the game or anything else. It's deemed to be unworthy of being a gaming title, purely because the gatekeepers have told us that is so. That is what I'm against. It's like with hatred. Not my kind of game. Not really the sort of thing that I would probably play for longer than a few hours. But neither was Manhunt on the Xbox. Didn't stop me from playing it. Didn't stop me from getting some enjoyment out of it. It's just the fact that there wasn't my regular go-to game. And when we start having these people who decide that they're going to monitor what we're going to be able to access and play, pretty much like the people did it in Australia when they got Target to pull GTA 5 from the shelves. Yeah, admittedly, the game had been out for best part of a year, so it'd been selling. But is the fact that they were able to lean on an employer, on a stockist of a game like Target in a territory like Australia, and pull a game because it's problematic, because it doesn't fit their worldview. That is where I draw the line. That is where I turn round and say, no, you are entitled to your opinion, but it's an opinion. If you try saying that your opinion is a fact, prove it. Oh, look, Grand Theft Auto 5 doesn't like women and causes sexism. Prove it. Oh no, Grand Theft Auto causes violence, a la Jack Thompson. He couldn't prove it. Same argument, different window dressing. It wasn't proven then, and it isn't proven now. And that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. The great Christopher Hitchens himself. If you don't have the evidence to back up your claim is just that, a claim, and it is empty. It is worthless. It isn't worth the air that you've spoken to breathe it, never mind the paper it's written on. Why am I doing this now? Well, this is because I was speaking to someone the other day who I would consider we're friends. We don't know each other very well. We've met each other a few times. We drink. We have the odd beer here and there. And as part of a group, part of a social group, we get on fine. So we are friendly. And they were coming out with some interesting things about what they'd heard about Gamergate. Now, when I first started these videos, the very first thing I prefaced these videos doing was saying that I did not condone doxing, harassment and illegal behaviour on either side. So I was calling attention to the fact that there were bad actors on both sides, but it was the fact that they were on both sides, and I distanced myself from those who would consider themselves allies to me, who were bad actors, as much as those on my opposition, who were also bad actors. And that is important to note, that I do not wish for there to be bad actors who follow the same things. I will distance myself from them. But by the same token, disagreement by and of itself is not a bad action. If someone says the sky is blue and someone turns around and says no, the sky isn't blue, that is merely the diffraction of light through scattered particles in the atmosphere that give it the appearance of being blue, then technically they're both right. But if the one who then turns around and says it's blue then says, oh, what the hell do you think you're talking about? You're such a nerd, you're this, you're that, you deserve a smack in the mouth, then I will not listen to that person anymore, because they have shown a propensity to violence because you've challenged their idea. Now, if the disagreement was on something like something much more tangible, such as this is a table, this is a chair, you sit on one but not on the other, and there is all this kerfuffle, and someone turned around and says, shut up or I'll hit you in the mouth, again, I wouldn't side with the bad actor. But someone who turns around and says, you're misogynist because you disagree with me, I'm a woman, you're a man, straight away the instinct is to go, well, hang on a minute, you're now crying foul because you're different genders. So you'd look even further into their claim. You're now calling someone a misogynist because he disagrees with you. Well, what nature does that disagreement take? Has he told you to shut the fuck up? Has he told you to shut up because you're a woman? Has he told you that you're wrong because you're a woman? If he hasn't done any of those things, then his behaviour hasn't been misogynistic. It's purely the way in which you have taken that claim because he's a man and gone, you're a misogynist because you disagree with me. No matter the fact that the man might be right, they still claim it as being misogynist purely because you don't agree with them. And I've had it. I know personal data and personal anecdotes aren't worth anything that they're written on. That's a trigger warning. But I've been the victim of it myself, where I'm sat perfectly natural on a tube train and I've been accused of manspreading. And this is someone who's got umpteen bags of shopping taking up both seats either side of her. So you can't sit next to her either side because those two seats are now full of her bag. So she's taking up 3 seats. And because I'm sat with my legs slightly too far apart for her liking, I'm a misogynistic shitlord because I'm taking up too much space. And yet people could sit next to me quite happily. And yet I'm the one at fault. There's a very famous bit in the Bible, which I don't often quote, but I think is verily apparent here, about Jesus talking about removing the splinter in your eye, the log in your eye, before talking about the splinter in somebody else's. And I feel that is what we're fighting against. We're fighting a battle against gender ideologues who can see things as problematic to them, but most of us would turn round and go, you what? Grow up. It's nothing. What are you talking about? What is this thing that you're trying to argue against? What is it you're trying to say? And at the end of the day, all it is the fact that they have a different opinion to the rest of the world, and because they think that they belong to one of these disadvantaged groups, which are powerless, which therefore means they don't have power, therefore they are disadvantaged, therefore any ism that you can attach to this lack of power becomes whatever it is as an ism. They can say whatever they like and get away with it. And what they don't realise, what they're doing themselves, is they're then disenfranchising us, and they're taking all the power for themselves, and they're actually the people in power. They can't see the knock-on effect of their own actions. And one of the most brilliant books to see this in action is called Soul of the Fire, and it's by a writer called Terry Goodkind, and it's part of the Sword of Truth series. And what it does is it shows that you have 2 blood types of people in a kingdom. One called the Anders, and I think one of them called the Harkonnen. Nothing like Dune, but they're called Harkonnen. And in the past, the Harkonnen have been wild, vicious barbarians who've invaded the land of the Anders, and they took it over. And now, centuries later, the Ander people, who are bureaucratic and that kind of bureaucracy-minded, they have now retaken over their kingdom. And now, because of the past aggressions of the Harkonnen, they're now like a servant-slave class, where they can't hold weapons, they can't hold certain ideals, they can't be educated, because all that would happen is that they would revert to the barbaric ancestral ways. And you can't be racist against the Harkonnen because they're the lowest of the low, whereas the Anders are morally pure, and nothing they do and nothing they say can ever be wrong, because they are the persecuted class. Even though they're now in power, they're still the persecuted class. And even though they have these people, the Harkonnen, in perpetual bondage, they're still the aggressors. They're still the people with the power. They're still the people that, if you give the Ander people a wrong look, will be punished, because of a couple of hundred years ago their ancestors invaded the country. And this is the kind of parallel that we're now getting into with these social justice warriors, with third wave feminism, and with this idea that games are problematic because they have women in them. Now, one of the things that really ground my gears in recent times is this whole so-and-so X is trans. And this is nothing more than cultural appropriation. They're constantly talking about us doing it to them, but this is one reason where we can go back nearly 40 years to a character in an 8-bit generation, and because you couldn't tell whether they were male or female throughout the game until he got to the end and the character took her helmet off, that means that she's trans. Complete whitewashing of history. Complete whitewashing of history. And those of you who know what whitewashing truly means, then you know that what they're doing is the same thing with a sexual and non-gender, non-binary thing, to change history and to make it different to what it was. And this is because they want so desperately to try and unsettle, disrupt, disroot, and ultimately displace gamers. They want it to be so that we don't have any of our icons left, because they have appropriated the icons. They can't stand the fact that we created a new icon, Vivian. To them, oh no, we've got a woman as a figurehead. Oh no, that must mean that it's something that means that it's there to deny us. No, you were just trying to deny us our icons, so we created another one. And lo and behold, you didn't like the colours that were used, because they were rape colours. Yes, indeed. Purple and green are allegedly rape colours. Have you heard such utter and flagrant nonsense? Rape colours. The fact that you have feminists who are out there saying, if you look at me the wrong way, that's rape. If you smile at me, that's rape. It's ridiculous. And then we have these vaunted statistics, these vaunted things that have been going for God knows how many years, which are complete and utter bunkum from studies that aren't worthy for me to wipe my backside on them, because they're the way in which they've been carried out, their whole the whole way in which things have been measured, are complete tosh. The fact that we have this thing called feminist theories of intersectionality, feminist theories of X and Y, feminist theory of this and feminist theory of that, where they take the generic sort of colloquial use of theory to give it that name for what they've done, and then expect to be held up in the same regard as a scientific theory. I can tell you now that there's no such thing as a feminist theory that could stand up to the peer process that a scientific theory could. They are nothing more than a hypothesis. Well, they're not even really worthy of the name hypothesis. They're really little more than a guess. And the work that has gone into them is so shoddy, so biased, and such And you can see where they've gone in with a pretext, with an idea that they've already got, and then they screw with the data to fit their preconceived narrative, that these things really are preaching to the converted. They aren't looking at an idea and saying, oh, look at this. This is something which may be a problem. If we take it this way, we can go out into the world and see whether or not it is. They have already made up their mind that there is a rape culture. And things like the RAIN survey that they did, where the actual surveyor, the person writing on the paper, was the one who decided what was rape and what wasn't, was ticking the boxes. It wasn't the person who was being asked. They were asked the question like, have you ever been kissed whilst drunk and you didn't want it? That was down as rape, unwanted sexual contact. And that's how they get this 1 in 4 number. That's how they get these misleading statistics. And these things are also used in what's called triangulation of sources, where person A will be cited by person B, who is then cited by person C, who is also citing person A. And then other people can go along and says, well, C says it, therefore I can quote C. Somebody else comes along and says, well, there's person B, so I'll quote person B. And somebody else comes along and cites person A. So now you've got persons D, E, and F all citing the same thing. But because you've got A, B, C, D, E, F, it looks like there's so many more people saying the same thing, whereas in fact they're all just saying what A said. And that's where the problem with the 1970s statistics comes from. When you actually look at where these figures come back to, they come back to someone's speech, which isn't even recorded anywhere, where they have said certain things. And just like the Tim Hunt speech, which if we hadn't have had recordings, we would be seeing as an out-and-out misogynistic bastard who hated women because he had a problem with women and it was either fall in love with them or shout at them and have them cry. That would be the narrative. In 30 years from now, that would be who Tim Hunt was. Because someone had an agenda, because someone took something out of context and built a narrative around it. We've seen it happen within the last year, of where a narrative has been framed over words somebody has said, and they have been deliberately attributed, they have been deliberately misconstrued, and they have led others astray. And then there has been a backlash about what has been said. The backlash has become a witch hunt about other people in a field, about men having the power and women not. And if it hadn't been for other people that have actually turned around and got a recording of what was said, how it was received, and been able to completely debunk the actual narrative that had been built up, then we would have another system where an Android walking light figure would form a narrative, would form a story, and pass it forward as gospel truth, which can't be disproven. And I say to people, you've got to look at more than one side of this. Yes, people turn around and say the truth is a three-edged sword. There's your side, my side, and the truth. I say it's infinitely more varied than that. We have what one person perceives to be truth, what another person perceives to be truth, and then you have the bad actors in the middle who twist and turn and try to break these narratives down so that person A can't be right and person B can't be right, but some twisted thing of idiotic and gigantic proportions can be made that has no bearing to the truth of either side, but is born the truth of some twisted narrative. And that is what Gamergate is. It is this twisted narrative built by the mainstream media and people who have an agenda to push so they can keep on gatekeeping games, gatekeeping books such as the Sad Puppies, Tor books, and the Hugo Awards. These things are gateways where people have an agenda, a narrative that they want to force onto everybody else, and woe betide if you fall out of that remit. That is the point of why we fight. That is what anti-Gamergate is. That's what the whole point of Hugo's and the Sad Puppies and everything else were, is saying, look, This is a narrative which has no basis in reality. It is built on sand, and they're telling you it's rock. You are going along with bad actors, people who are misinforming you, people who are deliberately leading you up the garden path with lies. Because let's call it what it is. It's a lie. And they are doing it not because they are trying to make the world a better place for anybody. They are trying to make the world theirs. They are trying to build a reputation and line their wallets with either social capital or money. And that is it. There is no other reason for what they're doing. They're con artists, they're liars. And we, as Gamergate and the Sad Puppies and everybody else who stood up against this narrative, will tell you all we want is a return to the playing field where A equals A, truth is truth, lies are lies, and we can tell the difference. We are sick and fed up of having these people tell us that bread is poison and water is something that will kill us if we eat it, when in fact it's actually good for us, it's a staple food stuff, and it meets our needs. We have to end this. We have to show these people up for who they are. A year has passed with me being in this, and this is my 21st video on the subject. How many has Anita Sarkeesian managed with $160,000? I've managed this with a £30 pair of headphones. That's it. And with that note, I shall sign off. Say thank you for listening, and goodbye until the next time.